So we have this great calling, and I want to just, before I begin here in 2 Peter, I want to just remind us of how that was put in the book of Hebrews. In Hebrews chapter 3, verse 1, it speaks of our calling, but it doesn't just say that it's a calling, a vocation of itself, but here it says, therefore, holy brothers who share in a heavenly calling. Fix your thoughts on Jesus, the apostle and the high priest whom we confess. What we have is a heavenly calling. It is the greatest game. It is more than the Super Bowl or the World Series or the World Cup with soccer. This is the greatest game ever. And having watched the movie Invictus and read the book, Nelson Mandela and the rugby team, and you realize how much that impacted not only the team, but the whole nation, and brought them together and crossed boundaries. Now, I found this quite interesting yesterday, that as we were doing the military funeral after the fact, the person who was our host there said, this has been one of the best services I've ever witnessed. And the diversity of people here to celebrate one man's life. And indeed, it was a diversity of people. Black and white and Hispanic, old, young, were there to celebrate his life. This is the thing about what God has called us to. And you can't help but appreciate that. So we have a heavenly calling, and we have a great coach. We have a great coach in Christ, in Jesus. We have a great coach there who's called us in the game. We're on the team, and we get to play. Now, sometimes when the game gets rough, it's like, I don't want to go in, coach. I don't want to go in. But the reality is he's called us to play in this game. Dan asked a question about worshiping in spirit and truth. Well, we know this. We know this much, that no one can come to Christ except the Father draw him. And the Father draws us, and we know that has happened, and we know that we want a relationship with Jesus. It isn't always what we think it ought to be, or we may not feel that way, but we know that the Father is involved in our life. And we know that God is working in our life. And we have that confidence, and from that we know that truth, and we take that as a confidence. I am reminded quite often how I ended up here in California and how I ended up with this congregation. And I'm just thinking, I am so thankful to have this congregation, to work with the people whom God has given me to work with. I appreciate that very, very much. But it is, I believe, very definitely God's hand in doing all those things. So God didn't do this to just leave us alone, but rather that we might be involved in the game. And kind of as your coach in Christ, I'm saying, look, you're very, very involved in the game. And the game is a big game. The game is a huge game. The game is the Super Bowl. And this is how you play. Let me give you some techniques. Let me help you to understand things. And let me help you to inspire and to encourage you not to give up and quit, because it appears on the scoreboard that you're losing. It appears that. But there is an incredible victory that we have. An incredible comeback that's beyond your imagination. We talk about a resurrection. That's an incredible comeback. It is a victory that we have, and it's a hope that we have. So, and we believe in Jesus' game plan. Because as a coach, you've got to have a game plan. And you have some certain things you don't always tell everybody, because you want to keep the team involved in working with one another. So we trust the coach. We trust Jesus. And we say, in essence, to Jesus, here I am, coach. Send me in. Now, I believe that Charles was that kind of person. Here I am, coach. Send me in. I firmly believe that. because I only touched on the tip of the iceberg yesterday when I mentioned that Charles, an African American, joined a white church. But it wasn't about a white church. It was about his pursuit of God as God was leading and directing him. It's like, well, I'm putting you on this team. Now, it's been a really interesting journey for the white teammates to accept and to have him on part of the team, because you see, on the South African team, there was one black. There was one black on the South African team, and it was a little difficult for the team to accept him. But you see, yesterday, I couldn't help but realize how much the team had accepted. And sometimes you don't, until you go through the process and you walk the steps, you realize, oh wow, truly we have a brother in Christ who is there, who played on the team and made the sacrifices for the team, because you could have walked away many, many times. So you can't help but say, God, you are awesome and good in helping us through this. So he was a team player. Yeah, that's good. That's a valid point. Otherwise, you can go to our black church. Yeah, but he chose to stay here. And we have benefited from that because we got to know Charles as a person. You see, this is what playing the game is all about, getting to know a person for who they are in Christ Jesus. And recognizing, crossing those barriers that we have with one another. And as we're going to move through this, we're going to see that. So he's a team player. And when he was on the bench, because he got benched, because he couldn't get around to do that, he still cheered. He didn't pout. He encouraged. And, we all do not fully understand all the support that Charles has been to us through the congregation. I mean, here's a man who had many reasons not to come, but always came. And we saw the growth of Charles ourselves working through that. So what I want to do is kind of just walk through briefly 2 Peter. I think it's kind of like a game plan. And here it is. It's like we're all suited up and we're kind of ready to go. We're called on a team. So 2 Peter chapter 1. And we're going to take a look at this, at the game plan and the playbook. Peter, Simon Peter, a servant and an apostle of Jesus Christ. Now, we have to, I think, realize this is why we're created. We were created to be in God's image and to be on the team, to be a part of the family. We were created for that purpose. However, so many people do not realize that. They want to play in some other game. They don't, and yet this is the reason why we're designed and created the way in which we are, and to play this game of life, because it has some incredible promises in the future. But Peter says, I'm a servant and an apostle of Jesus. And there is no greater calling than this. And we need to recognize that in this great calling that God has given to us, there are so many fans who hope in us. Now, they don't really fully realize that yet. It was like with the South African team. The Afrikaners, didn't want anything to do with them because they were the white team. They were the ones who had suppressed them all the time. It wasn't until they all got on board and realized the joy, and they all started pulling for one another and cheering for one another, they realized, wow, this is the hope that we have. We have the hope of winning the World Rugby Championship.
Feeling the blues today or tired of life already? Do you have questions about life or need spiritual advice? We can help. Log on to worldwidechurchofgod.com or wcgfairfield.blogspot.com and stay connected to reality. The Worldwide Church of God in Fairfield, Santa Rosa, and Modesto are located in the San Francisco Bay Area, regarded as the most prosperous region in the United States. We believe Jesus Christ when he proclaimed in Matthew 6:24 that serving God is more important than serving mammon. We welcome everyone to come and worship and fellowship every Saturday at the times listed on your screen and on our website, worldwidechurchofgod.com.